The house of every one is to him as his castle and fortress.
Do you have 2 seconds to answer a quick question? Could be here sometime. A, B or C?
C.
100% C.
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 The roots of Tudor-style buildings can clearly be seen in earlier centuries. Then the Normans arrived. The Montfort's rebellion was ultimately unsuccessful, but Edward I couldn't ignore the implications.
The Tudors led not with the tyranny of foreign conquerors, but with the confidence of righteous heirs. Historian John Guy argues that England was economically healthier, more expansive, and more optimistic under the Tudors than at any time since the Roman occupation.
This is Merry England, a golden age when the core needs of the English, security and liberty, were met. And as a result, they thrived.
As mentioned before, churches and administrative buildings favour the Gothic even today. In the Tudor times, we can add to this list places of education, manor houses, and royal palaces. These are all buildings where authority has to be respected and all employ Gothic themes. What we are primarily interested in here are the buildings Sir George Gilbert Scott rather dismissively referred to as vernacular buildings. At this point, we're going to draw a distinction between so-called vernacular architecture and the formal style today known as polite architecture. In the Tudor period, the homes of the gentry and the homes of the people were not that dissimilar. We saw familiarity across the classes, indicating a kinship. It's during the Jacobean period we start to see them drift apart. Court favourite Inigo Jones laid ample groundwork for the Continental Revolution that would grip polite architecture post-Civil War. For our golden age, the beginning of the end was 1666, when one baker, Thomas Fariner, utterly destroyed Tudor London with fire. Christopher Wren was commissioned to rebuild it, and with the so-called Glorious Revolution of 1688 and the ascension of the Dutch King William to the throne of England, a dark shadow loomed over the land. Wren's designs, coupled with the post-fire building code for London, meant the continental style dominated. Titanic stone structures with domes, porticos and columns resembled the Olympian abode of Mediterranean legend. The redesign culminated in new churches and townhouses, alongside majestic monolithic marvels like the Royal Exchange and St Paul's Cathedral. In 1694, usury, long outlawed, was written back into English life with the creation of the Bank of England. From then on, money ruled over morality, debt over land, exploitation over freedom. For many, it was the final nail in the coffin of merry old England. Where once buildings had sprung up from kinship and craft, they now bent under the weight of finance. And from the ashes of ancient oak, the world-famous capital arose. This new style was one of compasses and squares, of reason and rationality, a far cry from the wattle and daub of the past. These were buildings of power, not people. Kings were desperate to associate themselves with Greco-Roman gods and men to legitimise their right to rule the waves and fool the slaves. The Tudors traced their lineage back to the Normans, to Alfred the Great, to King Arthur, and to Brutus, the founder of Britain. The Georgian kings traced theirs to the gods themselves. Their architects preferred the Flemish bond, the Dutch gable, the Italian frieze, the Greek column. The style was grandiose, impressive, imposing, sophisticated. Its artisans were educated in philosophy and in classical theories and used modern tools that could measure precisely and so raise the grandest, most perfect buildings. But still, they rarely comforted. In the city, foreign plasterers made real the aristocrat's dream of lavish festivities with Pan and Saturn. While in the shires, pargeters scratched their plaster with old English folk figures. The cities became reverberant and hard to the touch, their parks too precise, their roads too regular, and slowly they filled with desperate wanderers, lost souls choking and crowded among the dark mills of industrialisation. This land of such dear souls, this dear, dear land, dear for her reputation through the world, is now leased out. I die pronouncing it, like to a tenement or pelting farm. England, bound in with the triumphant sea, whose rocky shore beats back the envious siege of watery Neptune, is now bound in with shame, with inky blots and rotten parchment bonds. That England, that was wont to conquer others, hath made a shameful conquest of itself.